little by little and conquering Canaan. And so Deuteronomy chapter 7, I'll read verse 18, and I'll read through verse 26. It says, if thou shalt say in thine heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? Thou shalt not be afraid of them, but thou shalt remember what the Lord thy God did unto Pharaoh and unto all Egypt. The great temptation which thine eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand, and the stretched out arm, whereby the Lord thy God brought thee out. So shall the Lord thy God do unto all the people of whom thou art afraid. Moreover, the Lord thy God will send the hornet among them until they that are left and hide themselves from thee be destroyed. And thou shalt not be frightened of them, for the Lord thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrible, and the Lord thy God will put out these nations from before thee little by little. Thou mayest not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. But the Lord thy God shall deliver them unto thee, and thou shalt destroy them with a mighty destruction until they be destroyed, and he shall deliver their kings unto thine hand, and thou wilt destroy their name from under heaven. There shall no man be able to stand before thee until thou have destroyed them. The graven images of their gods shall ye burn with fire, and shall not desire the silver or gold that is in them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to the Lord thy God. Neither shalt thou bring an abomination unto thine house, lest thou be cursed like it. But thou shalt utterly detest them, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, until it is, for it is a cursed thing. All right, let's go ahead and pray, and we'll get started here. Father, thank you for the chance to teach your word. Thank you for the chance to be together here in this Bible class, and I pray you'd speak in a great way. May we be edified and grow in grace, and may your word really speak to our hearts and help us to see these lessons for ourselves. And we just pray for your spirit all day upon the services. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's see, Charlie and Travis, can you guys come hand these out here? Let's also... Let's get Curtis helping out with that. I just got a map for everybody. I got myself one here, and over here on the other side. Go. Hand those out, and you just leave some with Josh in the back. That way, if anybody comes in late, they can hand them a little map there. Real simple map here, but it is we're talking about going into Canaan land. So let me give you the background a little bit. Israel comes out of Egypt. They go down to they cross the Red Sea, they go down to Mount Horeb, the Mount of God, and then they come up to Kadesh Barnea. Then they send the spies in, and when they're almost there, they decide we're not going to go and be with the, we don't believe God can bring us in there. So they wander around for 40 years. And then they come up, and Moses dies, and Joshua takes over. And they are sitting on the edge of the promised land that they're supposed to go into. Now, the promised land, or Canaan, the same thing, is the promised land that God promised to them. And it is a picture in the Bible of the victorious Christian life. We see that in the book of Hebrews, chapters 2 and 3 and such. But so we see that they are getting ready to go into the promised land and go into the new territory, and God is preparing them for that before they go and telling them, when you go in, here's what you need to do to be prepared to go into this thing. And a lot of people don't enter in life in general. They don't enter into the promised land of life, nor certainly in the Christian life, which is victory, which is going where you want to go, which is doing God's will. It is true also in life in general, even not inside the spiritual realm, but just people. People generally settle in life for a mediocre life. They just because it takes a lot to really push into the great life. Because great things don't come easy. Mediocre and bad things come very easy. If you just let yourself go or do the easy thing, you'll end up generally with a pretty weak life. And it's very easy at the start. It's always usually life is like this. If you do the hard thing at first, you have good afterward. If you do the easy thing at first, you have bad afterward. That's generally the way it is. Whether that's your health, Whether that's your finance, whether that's your studies, your education, your marriage, doesn't matter. You marry the quickest, easiest thing, you'll probably struggle your whole life. You wait for the right person and prepare yourself and do all the things you should do. You are much happier. Same with your finances. You can get in debt really, really quick, just doing what's easy, and you'll spend a whole lot of time trying to pay that off. It's just life. But in the spiritual life, not many people get to go into the victorious Christian life. That's why people don't know how awesome it is to serve God, because they don't go into Canaan land, because Canaan land takes some work, because there's giants and there's enemies there. And he's telling them, you're going to face those things, and I want to prepare you for it and do that. So if you look at your map there, and we'll look at it more, but it's a real simple map. But you see them at number 1. They're going to cross what's called the Jordan River there. And that's basically when they enter into the promised land, is when they cross the Jordan. And that's where they're going to start facing enemies right away. And so just some points here. Number 1, conquering requires faith to take the first step. Conquering requires faith to take the first step. In our passage here, in verse 18, it says this, "Thou shalt not be afraid of them, but shall well remember that what the Lord thy God did unto Pharaoh and unto all of Egypt." In verse 21 again, "Thou shalt not be frightened at them, for the Lord thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrible." You're not supposed to be afraid of them. Look, you're going to face enemies, but don't be afraid of them. Remember, we said God's not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Never take counsel of your fears. Do not refuse to do something because you're afraid of it. You make logical and spiritual and prayerful and full of counsel decisions. And in that pile of things you put into a decision, and there's in that pile, you don't put fear into there. You never take counsel of your fears. And he says, do not be afraid of them. I am with you. I've already conquered bigger enemies than this, God said, and I'm going to bring you in. And we can have victory, so do not be afraid. But that first step, initially in life, you find the first step is usually the hardest. And in the spiritual realm, when you, usually the battle is won or lost when God says, go do this, and you say, if I do that, and you consult your fears and you say no, look, every fear you had, God would conquer if you'd obey. Or when you say, you know what, God said to do it, I'm going to go do it. And then you do it, and then all of a sudden all the doors start opening because God's with you and he takes care of it. But the doors don't open and God does not destroy your enemies before you get there. It's after you obey. The first step is the hardest, and that's what you have to do, is take that first step, and do not be afraid of the enemies. There's always hard things in life. There's always hard things to overcome to do that. I face this all the time. God always asks me, so often, not always, but often asks me to go do something that's bigger than me, that's harder than I know what to do. I have to live here. I have to live taking steps of faith and trusting God. And I'm so glad I get to do that, because I get to do amazing things. God pushes me into things that I don't know how to do, and things that are bigger than me, and things I can't figure out, and says, do them. And then I get to do them, because when I obey, God always takes care of them. I cannot be afraid to obey God. We had this Africa trip that we're going to take this year, and this trip was just, I've been just so busy and traveling so much. The truth is, I really didn't want to take it, but I felt I was led to take it. And then I felt like I needed to go to Botswana and be with a certain missionary. And I didn't know the guy well at all. You don't even know him. He just came by here during the week one time and met me, and him and his wife. But I felt like we should go there and also go to Zambia. And nobody takes a mission trip to two different countries like that. It's very difficult to travel, and the time and everything. But I felt led to do that. And so I just emailed him. I said, hey, shot in the dark here. I'm thinking about coming to Africa in June or July, and your name keeps popping up. Is that anything you'd be interested in? He writes me back. He says, you wouldn't believe it. He says, we have a missions trip. We have 2 scheduled mission trips for people to come to be with us. And those dates are my second missions trip, and we don't have anybody coming yet. And he says, we would love to have you. And so we started taking the steps, and it seemed like nothing was working, and people couldn't come, and nobody could come, and then all of a sudden, boom, all kinds of people can come and go with us. And I was talking to him last night. we're communicating, thank God for the internet and things. And he says, we have a second group now that's coming. It's in 3 different churches. It's just people who couldn't fit into the first mission trip. And he says, there's no pastors. We really need you to come to be a pastor because all these people are laymen. We need a pastor and a preacher. And he said, he says, what do you do best? And I said, well, is there anything? And, eat. But he says, what do you do best? And I said, well, I try to train pastors, but I said, I like working with the young people. And you start talking about the need there. Botswana is similar to, Zambia, where they had for a while, Zambia and Botswana were both the number 1 country in the world for AIDS. And you had a whole generation die off. Over 50% of the people had AIDS, those 2 countries. And what happened is all the parents died. And so in Zambia, 75% of people are under 25 years old. And just the way that things happen. And he says, everybody looks to me as a dad, and they didn't have their parents really raise them. A lot of them became orphans at 8 or 10 or 12. And he says, if you could go and we get the teenagers together and preach to them, he says, maybe we can teach them how to, because they're very dependent, even though they're 23, 25 years old. And he says, it's funny, I read your testimony and I realized it's strange because you raised yourself also. I said, yeah, I did raise myself. And he says, man, I think you'd really help them. But you see, all of that is after I took the step. That stuff never, God's going to bless it, and it's going to be a great trip, and God's going to use it. But none of that happens when you say, if everything works out, I'll go. You spend your whole life waiting for things to work out. I know those people. I'm talking to those people. Say, look, you got to step out, man. You're doing nothing with your life. You're getting older and older, and you're sitting there saying, if everything comes together, if everything works out, if the right job falls in my lap, right jobs don't fall in your lap. Very rarely. You got to go get things, and you got to take steps of faith. And to serve God, the devil's going to stand there and say, you can't, it'll never happen, you will never make it, you can never be a good Christian, you can never be used by God. The devil's going to do that all day. He scares people up front. Why? Because when you go in, the Lord goes with you and starts defeating him. So he's got to stop you before you start. And so conquering requires faith to take the first step. Let's go to Joshua chapter 3. And so things will happen with this trip, and there's going to be all kinds of problems, and oh no, what are you going to do with problems? Look, I didn't grow up in the generation where if there's problems, you don't do it. I was fortunate enough, I don't know why, I don't think I was that smart. I hung around and listened a lot to the greatest generation who went through the Great Depression and World War II. So I kind of come into life just going, there's going to be problems, it's going to be hard, and you have to overcome things. That's just the way I look at life. And people, but it's hard. Yeah. But I don't know how I'm going to do this, but you got to do it. But I don't know how. You got to do it. And if I could train our church and just get that in your mind that, look, you got to do things. You can't sit there and be paralyzed. Well, it's going to be difficult. It might not work. Yeah, it might not work. That's life. And you know what? You overcome it. You make it work. You make things happen. And you ask God to help you, and you get strength from God. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Things are going to be difficult in life if they're great. And it's very easy to do nothing. And you have no problems except for you do nothing. And doing nothing is miserable. And Joshua 3, it's interesting. The first thing that's supposed to go in is the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because that's the symbol of the presence of God. And the river is overflowed. Oh no, God must not be in it. No, God's totally in it. But the river's flooded, and they got to go across the river to go into Jordan. There's no bridges, there's no ferries, there's no boats, there's no jet skis. And they've got to get in. And the Ark of the Covenant's got to go first, and the priests, you have to carry the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, and they have to walk in, and Joshua says, go across the river. And they're looking at the big river with the big piece of furniture on their shoulders, and they have to take the step. And God says, as soon as you step in, the waters will part. But the waters don't part till you step in. And Joshua chapter 3 and verse 13, it says, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon the heap. Do you notice the way it said that there? As soon, and it literally says this, as soon as their feet, the soles of their feet touch the waters apart. That's called stepping in faith. It's just so funny way to phrase it. Literally, it's like they're going up and they're putting their foot down and the water's still not parted, but all of a sudden their foot touches the water. The water separates up. That is the way it works, because you have to step out in faith. And if you want everything to be worked out before you step out in faith, you're going to find the waters don't part when you're sitting back there in your tent looking at the river. You got to take the step of faith. And the waters, verse 14, and it came to pass when the people removed from their tents and to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped into the brim of the water, for Jordan overfloweth at the banks this time, that the waters which came up down from above stood up and rose upon a heap very far from the city of Adam, which was beside Zarethan. And those that came down from the sea of the plain, even the salt sea failed, and were cut off, and the people passed over against Jericho. And the priests that bare the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground, and all the people were passed clean over Jordan. They walked on dry ground, but they had to put their feet in the water first. And they did. Number one, conquering requires faith to take the first step. Number two, great things usually start with the biggest challenges. In Joshua chapter 6 and verse 1, now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. Jericho was a walled city with a massive wall around it. I've read that they used to have chariots races around the top of the wall. It was so thick. And it was so tall and not scalable, and they didn't have modern weapons. It was swords and spears and shields. And they were traveling. They were nomadic people. They didn't have catapults. They didn't have all the weapons to overcome this wall. And it was a border city. It was the first, when you come into the country, the first thing you have to face is the big challenge, and that's right there. And great works usually start with the biggest challenges. And so we see, again, they have to face Jericho right away. But, God was with them. God told them what to do, and they walked around Jericho, and the walls collapsed, and they had an easy victory there. But it was the scariest thing at the start, and that's the thing, is you do face your tough battles up front and at the start, and great works start that way. Number three, it takes steadfastness to inherit the blessing. It takes steadfastness to inherit the blessing. If you look at your map there, and I didn't even look at this guy that close, but we see Jericho. One is they cross over Jordan. They go to Jericho at number 2 there. And then they go to number 3, which is Ai. Ai is nothing. And Ai is just a small little town, and it's not walled and everything much, and it's not a powerful town, but they do. And they get defeated there. Why? Because they didn't pray about it. They took it lightly. They were careless, and they got defeated there, and they lost the battle of Ai. Now, here's the thing about it is you got to keep on going and keep on going and keep on going and not end. You have to be steadfast. You're going to have you can take a step back. Remember we talked about a just man falls 7 times and riseth up again. And rised up again. I've tried to explain before, and it's just a mindset that it's the only thing that saved me as a new Christian, because I failed so many times when I first became a Christian, and I had so many things and so many battles. But when I decided to serve the Lord, I didn't decide to try to serve the Lord. That was my life now. I just said, this is it. This is what life's about. This is what life's worth living. And I'm going to serve the Lord the rest of my life, and I'm going to serve Him. Now, if I was just going to give it a try, I would have quit pretty quick because I failed a lot of times. But when it's not an option, when you decide this is my life, I'm going to do the rest of my life. Look, even if I wasn't a good Christian, I would keep serving the Lord, because if all I can give God is a bad Christian, I'd give God that. because I want to give God my life, and I want to serve the Lord. I never. It's not about trying, because most people go into serving God. They go into this thing and they're trying to live the Christian life to be happy and for God to bless them. It's about them. When serving God becomes about Him, it changes your attitude. Because when it's about you, if you feel bad or you fail or it's hard, you say, I don't want to do this anymore. When it's about Him, there's no turning back. You're going to serve Him the rest of your life. And if it's hard, and if it doesn't go good, and if you're not, and if you fail and you fall down sometimes, it's not about me. It's not about me. I know modern Christianity puts it about you and preaches about you, and God's going to prosper you, and God's going to give you this and bless you with this. But in the Bible, it's not about you. It's you lose your life. And Christ gives you His life, and you lose your life and you gain spiritual life, and it's not about you. It takes sacrifice, and it takes steadfastness. It's a determination. I'm going to serve God. We've got to conquer this land. You know how long it took to get the victory over this? 7 years. The winters they couldn't fight in, 7 years to win this battle. And you can see they started off going in the center there. If you look at the map, they went to Ai, and they had the center battles there in the middle of the country. They kind of just pierced their way in, and then they had to come back and rest for the winter. Then they went south, and they had to call it the Battle of Five Kings. They battled all these kings down there in the south. But it was a big, slow process with several million people in their country and in Israel. And they went and conquered the south. And they started going up north, and some of these battles were long pitched, slow battles, and it took a long time, but 7 years, and of course 7 is the number of completions, and in the Bible, and 7 years, and you got to just be steadfast, unmovable. Always abounding in the work of the Lord. Just, you got to keep on going. You got to be patient. You got to realize Christianity is not measured in days or weeks or years. It's measured in decades. And you just keep on. You want to get to the end and say, like Paul, I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. It takes steadfastness. You're going to lose some battles. You know how many battles the U.S. lost in World War II? There was I made a list one time how many battles the U.S. lost in World War II. They lost so many battles. Do you know the first battle of the Civil War, the North got destroyed and almost lost the capital on the first day of the war? I mean, battles, look, there's a lot of battles involved. If a boxer goes into a match and says, if I get punched, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. Well, you're going to get punched. Okay, it's part of the battle. And so you just be steadfast and just realize it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. I got to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going, and keep on fighting. And the devil's going to fight me, and I got to go to the end and finish what God's set before me. Because it takes steadfastness to inherit this blessing, and patience, and keeping on going, and go through the hard times and the bad days and the days where it's not exciting, and just keep on going. It takes steadfastness. Next, number 4, finish the job. Finish the job. Let's go back to Deuteronomy where we started out in chapter 7. I want you to see some things that God said here. He says, I want you to go in, I want you to conquer these nations. They're wicked nations. There's some bad people in there. I mean, these were people who would human sacrifice. They would burn their babies to death. I mean, just a wicked bunch of false gods they had. And he says, I want you to completely conquer these people. Don't make any treaties with them. Don't make any deals with them. Don't keep their gods. It says he says, look, when you find their gods of gold and silver, it says, don't even take the gold and use it and melt it down. Just destroy it all. You don't want anything to do. I want you to finish all this evil. I don't want you to leave any evil behind. In verse 25, it says, "And the graven images of their gods shall you burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or the gold that is in them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination unto the Lord." They're going to see this word snared a lot. "Neither shalt thou bring an abomination to thine house, lest thou be cursed, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing." Now, I want you to understand something. You might think this is crazy, but it's biblical. We just saw it. I've seen it in life. Understand, there is no other God I am Lord thy God. There is no other God. Isaiah 45 says it. Isaiah 44, Mark 12. It says it all over the place. The only wise God. There's no other God beside me. God says that very clearly. There's one God. Okay? 1 Timothy says, and one mediator between God and man. So there's one God. These gods are false gods. Psalm 115 says they have eyes, they see not, they have ears, they hear not. They that make them are like unto them. They're false gods, they're not real. But he says, don't bring those statues into your house. Don't take the gold, because they are a cursed thing, and it's going to have effect on you. Okay? Idols, God curses. And understand, and I can't teach a whole lesson here, but there is open doors, and when you open a door to unclean spirits, they come. And they come to places, and they come to things, and they can be on physical things. They can be on an idol. They can actually have a demon attached to it. You can have demons in a house. You can have there's all these spirits. Most people think there's ghosts. There is probably a spirit in there, but it's not a departed person. It's probably a demon that was attached to that house with that person that was invited in. And because there are those things. And it says, and so look, I travel all over the world and I go to faraway things, and there's cool things and statues and carved things. But if it's ever an idol, I don't take it. I got in my office, I got some cool things. I got wood carved from Africa, and I got elephants, and I got all kinds. But if it's an idol, I don't take it anywhere. I don't have it anywhere around me. Why? Because it's a cursed thing, it says. And I'll tell you a story about that. I was out witnessing, and I knocked on a door, and I was talking to a heroin addict and rough guy, and he was talking to me. He's very open, and we were having a good talk and stuff, and heroin addict doesn't bother me. I talk to him every week in my life, and drug addicts and everything else, and I'm used to rough people. It doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, understand. Everybody knows I don't get scared of hardly anything in the world. I'm just not a nervous person in the least. Well, I'm talking to this guy, and he says, "Hey, let's go inside and talk." And so we go into his apartment. I got to take you to the apartment right now, and as soon as I crossed I was looking at the ground. As soon as I crossed the threshold of that door, I instantly knew I was completely, pushed in. There were demons in every corner of that place. I didn't know anything. I just went in the house, and instantly I was like, and God said, "You need to get out of here." And I could feel like there were so many there that I was pushing them out of the way just to walk in the door. And I didn't know anything about the house, didn't know anything, just talking to the guy on his porch. Walk in the house, and I'm he's talking, I'm not listening, I'm going, what in the world's going on? I'm just looking at the ground thinking, how am I going to say I got to get out of here? I sit down, first thing I look up, and I look into his skull. And he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "the lady with me in the house here, she's a witch." He says, "She scares me to death." And he says, he told me she's really powerful. And she says, "Man, things move around in this house when nobody's here." He says, this thing is evil. I look, there's books in the occult all over the room. Now, I knew before I walked in something was wrong here. And I did that. And so I just said, "You know what? Hey, I got to go." And I just stood up and started walking. And he says, "She has got a statue that has got demons all over it. This statue is alive. And it's an idol." I said, that's nice. And anyway, I'm walking toward the door, and not because God said, "Get out of this place. You're not. This is not where to be right now, And this place is you need to get out of here." And again, you understand. I've witnessed the witch doctors. I've been in the most dangerous areas in America and around the world, and never sweat a thing. But this was something different. And I as I'm walking out, he grabs this thing, and I'm walking toward the door, and he says, "Here it is." And he turns around and shows me this statue, and I got hit physically in the face with a wave. It knocked my head back, and something hit me, and my face went completely numb. And I walked out the door, and he walked out the door with me, and he said, "You see that thing? It's so evil. That thing's real. It's alive. It looks at me," and all this stuff. And I said, like a rocket scientist I am, "You need to get out of this house." And he says, "Oh, I know, man. She can kill me anytime she wants. She's got powers and all this stuff like that." I said, "Look, this stuff's real, and greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. If it's Jesus Christ, you can have victory, but you don't want to go on the enemy's ground. Toughest soldier in the world, if he goes and puts down his gun and walks in the middle of 1,000 enemy soldiers, doesn't matter. And look, he says, you need to get rid of everything. Don't make a deal with the people. Clean the place out. Finish the job. And spiritually, you need to finish the job. In other words, you need to get the stuff all the way out of your life and not keep some stuff behind and keep some stuff of the old life. Many times people talk about that their house is so dark and this and that. And I can look around the house and say, why? You got that movie there. You got that book there. You got this thing here. You need to burn that stuff. They did in the Bible. They burn it. Get rid of it. And things in your life, when you go into the Christian life, you want to clear out everything and bring in godly things and just remove the old life. Don't hang on to some things because they become a snare. A snare is what you catch a rabbit and it puts its head in and then it's a noose for it. And you got to clean it out all the way. Look at Numbers. I'm going to be in Numbers chapter 33. This stuff's real. And your life needs to not just hang on to some old stuff and that's wicked and God doesn't want you to have. Numbers, what do they say? Numbers 33 and verse 55. But if thou wilt not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those which ye let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwelt. If you make a deal and you leave this stuff behind, it happens. And then Judges, we see it actually happening in Judges. And spend a little more time on this than I want, but I want to say, get all the old music, get all the old entertainment, get all the old friends. Either they get saved and start serving God, or you got to move on. You got to get the stuff out of your life. You got to clean it out. And don't leave part of your old sin. I'm not talking about you get rid of your car, okay? I'm saying the old stuff that's from the world and the wicked stuff. Don't keep your crack pipe in your house if you're a crack addict. But it costs money. Yeah, and the crack you're going to buy later to put in is going to cost more money. Get rid of everything. Burn it. Pour it out, light it on fire. Don't light your whole apartment on fire. But you got to get rid of stuff. Forsake it and come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord. They didn't. They left some enemies behind. They made some bargains. Well, you're pretty tough. Let's just sign this deal. And those things began to destroy the nation. Because they accepted it. You can keep battling it and defeating it, but if you accept it and let it stay, you're gonna be battling it forever. Judges 1 and verse 27. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean. Verse 30. Neither did Zaban drive out the inhabitants of Kitron. Verse 31. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko. And so on and so forth. And then in Judges chapter 2, and the angel of the Lord came and up from Gilgal to Boam and said, I have brought you up out of Egypt and brought you into the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I shall never break my covenant with you, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be thorns in your sides, and their God shall be a snare unto you. And it came to pass, and the book of Judges is all about those battles they had to fight. And it just kept on going on and on and on and on because they didn't finish the job. They didn't go all the way, and they left some stuff behind, and they didn't do that. Next, the Lord will not forget his faithful servants. Joshua chapter 14. Joshua chapter 14. We're seeing them going to the promised land here and seeing what's happening. And this is a great story because way back, if we go way back, so Israel had come out of Egypt, and then they went up, as we talked about the other week, to Kadesh Barnea. And when they're in Kadesh Barnea, which would be near Debir there at the bottom, they went and spied out the land, and 2 spies went and said, and this is so important you get this, the 2 spies said, let's go in at once. The 10 spies said no, and all of Israel said no. And so God said, okay, you're going to wander until you all die off. And then I'm only going to let 2 people go in, Joshua and Caleb. So now Joshua is leading the nation and going in, and Caleb is just one of the people there. And Caleb had to wander for 40 years. Now understand this. He's a young man, goes in and spies the land, says God can do it. Now he has to wander with everybody who wanders for 40 years until they all die off. But he's not going to die off because God's going to preserve him. And this concept is so wonderful and so exciting in the Bible. And then he's going to go into the promised land. So he cuts in there. He's there at Jericho. He's there at Ai. And they cut down. They start going south. And he gets this place called Hebron down there. And in Hebron, there's giants. And he says, this is the land I want. This is my tribe. And I want this mountain where those giants are. That's where I want to live. I like that mountain right there. Well, now he's 85 years old. And now poor Caleb, he's like, you'd be thinking, man, the poor old guy, he can't go defeat the mountain anymore, and he can't defeat the enemies, and he's old and he can't enjoy it. But that's not what happened. Because God said, you know what? When you're faithful to me, I will take care of you. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. God knew it was unfair what Caleb had to go through. So God said, I'm going to take care of you. And Caleb goes to Moses and says, I want that mountain right there, and give it to me. And verse 9, it says, and Moses swore on this day, saying, surely, he's telling the story, God's going to you're going to be able to go in because thou hast, the end of the verse, thou hast wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord hath kept me alive. As he said, this is Caleb, these 45 years, even since the Lord spake his first word unto Moses, and while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, and now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. He said, look, God's kept me alive these 85 years. Everybody else I was with died except for Joshua and me. And I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now for war, both to go out and to come in. I tell you something about life. Some people say, well, he was just saying that. I don't think he was just saying that. One, he was kept alive all that time. Number two, understand, when you get older, your passion for fighting, your testosterone goes down. And you say, I don't want that mountain. I want that recliner. And you don't want the mountain to fight the enemies anymore. He still had the fire burning. He saw the fire burning, which tells me he was still young and vibrant. And he chose the mountain with giants. He said, I'm as strong as I was then. God has preserved me supernaturally because I was faithful to him, and he's made it so I can go in and conquer that mountain. I want that mountain there. And to go out and come in now, verse 12, now therefore give me this mountain, whereof the Lord spake in that day. For thou heardest in that day how the Anakims were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be that the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord had said. And Joshua blessed him and spake and said, go on in, take it. And he got it. And his family inherited the land. You know, I just want to say, it was so good. When somebody's faithful to God, they may look like they're missing opportunities. They might have lost something. No. You don't lose anything when you serve God. God is going to bless you and take care of you. Man, I've seen people who they're going to marry the wrong person, and they finally gave it up for God, and then they said, but I'm never going to get married now. And then all of a sudden, God brought someone far better in their life. They didn't lose out. And the one they're going to marry weighs 400 pounds now, and maybe. But God took care of them. You didn't lose out when you served God. Look, our ministry, we started the church. I wanted to come here and pastor when I was 17. I knew I was supposed to come to Seattle and pastor. I had to wait. Till I was 28 before I started. Then I had to wait for the church got really going and all those things. And you say, man, you missed out on so much. No, we're making up for so much lost time. God has opened the doors so much that we are already more productive than if I would have been doing something else the whole time. Why? Because God does not make you lose out when you serve him. Even if, God forbid, on earth you serve him and you have to be a martyr, he's going to give you so many treasures in heaven because God takes care of those who are faithful to him. He blesses them. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. And he takes care of faithfulness. And he goes down and he gets Hebron and he defeats the enemies there, and he gets that mountain he wants. And number 6, don't leave voids in your life. Back to Deuteronomy chapter 7. You got to finish up because of time. Deuteronomy chapter 7. I'm saying it's a great life serving God, and you can have victory. You just got to decide you're going to do it and step out in faith and keep serving the Lord. And I always regret when I fail to obey God and step out in faith. And it's such a good thing to serve God. He's so good, and he takes care of us so well, and he's so able to give us a victory. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, don't leave voids in your life. In verse 22, God says, I'm going to defeat your enemies, but it's not going to be as fast as you think because I got to do some things here, and I know what's best for you. In verse 22, and the Lord thy God will put out those nations before thee little by little, 7 years, that thou mayest not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. But the Lord thy God shall deliver them unto thee, and shall destroy them with a mighty destruction until they be destroyed. He says, look, it's going to take some time. Why? Because if I took all the enemies, I just destroyed all of them, you'd have a vacant land. I'm going to give you a land where you're going to come in and get a vineyard for them. You're going to conquer the area, and you have vineyards and fruits on the vines, and you're going to have trees sitting there ready to pick the fruits. You're not going to have to burn down their houses. If I just abandoned it, everything would deteriorate. The wild animals will take it over and get overgrown. We're going to have to do it piece by piece. Go and you're going to fill in the land. You're going to conquer, fill it in, conquer, fill it in, conquer, fill it in, conquer, fill it in. Why? Because voids are always bad in the Bible. But some people say in nature abhors a void, and that's true in nature, but it's also a spiritual life. In Matthew 13, it talks about that a man had a demon and got it out and cleaned his house and garnished it, and it was empty. And the demon left and came back and found it empty, and he took 7 more demons back in and filled it up. Why? Because where there's void, there's problems. And I want to say that's the biggest reason you need to be doing something in your life. Do not sit around and do nothing. You will get yourself in trouble. You do not fill your vacant time with good things generally. People need to work. They need to be busy. They need to not have voids in their life. They don't need spiritual voids. By the way, if you don't get rid of bad and then put good in its place, you will end up worse off. You get rid of your bad music, you better put good music in its place. If you're going to get rid of your bad friends, you better put good friends in your place. If you're going to get rid of the Bible says, be not drunk with wine. Very good. But be filled with the Spirit. Replace your alcohol with the Holy Spirit. Be not overcome evil, but overcome evil with good. Don't just put bad out of your life. You put bad out and put good in. The Christian life is not about not doing bad. It's about getting rid of bad and putting good in there and having a good life. If you just try to stop hating, you're gonna find out you'll get more and more frustrated and angry. Why? Because you have a void. You will feel some emotions toward people. You get rid of hate and fill it with love. Because you can't just not hate. You have to have emotions. So you have to fill it with love. And so always make sure when you have a victory, you make sure you place that spot of bad with everything of good in your life. And you'll find that once you do that, you inherit great things and things go well. So go on in and conquer. You got a whole victory in life. You got your Canaan land in your life of a great life. God will give you that. We are more than conquerors through him that loved us. And it's there for you. So let's go ahead and go in. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the chance to teach your word. Lord, as we talk a little bit about the geography here in Canaan land and what's Israel now. And Lord, they had to go in and conquer. And I just pray that we would conquer and make sure we finish the job and not leave voids. Thank you for the chance to learn your word. And I pray you bless the service to follow as we celebrate the resurrection of our risen Lord. Bless the service to follow and speak to us in a mighty way. In Jesus' name, amen. You're dismissed.